Imagine Aristotle chasing a toddler with a banana. It's absurd, but I couldn't get that image out of my head one morning as I knelt in the kitchen, wiping sticky juice off the floor with one hand and prying a Lego from my foot with the other. It had been one of those mornings. Shoes were missing, one child was crying over oatmeal, and another had spilled their orange juice and was now devastated by the betrayal of gravity. As I groaned and reached for a paper towel, I suddenly thought, what would Aristotle say about this? What would any of the great philosophers say about these moments, the daily rituals and small disasters that make up the life of a hands-on dad? Would they consider this life the good life? According to Aristotle, Aristotle's idea of the good life wasn't about feeling happy or relaxed. It was about flourishing, living in alignment with reason, purpose, and virtue. He called it eudaimonia, not a fleeting emotion, but a condition of being, a life well lived. And how did one achieve this kind of flourishing? Through the practice of virtue. Not merely thinking virtuous thoughts, but doing virtuous things over and over again until they shaped who you are. That might sound distant from the world of early morning routines, tantrums, and math homework, but in truth, it's exactly where virtue is tested and refined. I don't grow in patience by reading about it. I grow in patience when my child takes 25 minutes to put on socks. I don't become humble by admiring humility. I become humble when I realize I've been wrong, again, and apologize to my kids for snapping at them. Virtue isn't built in the lecture hall, it's built at the breakfast table, or the school pickup line, or the grocery store meltdown. Repetition, intention, practice. Aristotle might say, that's the work of a philosopher. That's the good life. Over in ancient China, around the same historical window, Confucius was building a vision of life that also began with virtue, and like Aristotle, he believed that habitual action was the key to moral character. But unlike Aristotle, Confucius rooted his philosophy not in abstract concepts but in relationships, beginning with the family. According to Confucius, the home is the first and most important classroom. It's where we learn how to treat others with respect, compassion, and dignity. Filial piety, elder honor, attentiveness to family duty, these weren't optional for Confucius. They were the foundation for a well-ordered life and a well-functioning society. He said essentially, if you want to fix the world, start with how you treat your father, or your child. And there it is again. The good life begins at home. That's both empowering and deeply humbling. Because home is the place where I most often fall short. It's the place where my flaws are unfiltered and my weaknesses aren't hidden by professionalism or public polish. But maybe that's where it needs to happen. Jesus doesn't use Aristotle's philosophical categories or Confucius's ethical codes, but he paints a compelling picture of a life lived in love. And at key moments in his teaching he places children at the center. In one scene, while the disciples argue about who's the greatest, Jesus brings a child into the group and says, "Unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven." It's easy to sentimentalize that way, but the disciples probably didn't. In their world, children were considered marginal, powerless, and immature. For Jesus to make a child the model of spiritual greatness was radical. What did he see in children? Openness, dependence, unfiltered emotion, unquestioned worth. And what would he say to fathers? Perhaps, pay attention. Learn from the little ones. Don't look past them on your way to something more important. The child in front of you is the kingdom. So when I'm tempted to sigh my way through another tea party, or to roll my eyes at the fifth retelling of the same knock-knock joke, I try to remember this. The joke matters. The moment matters. Not just because it makes them feel loved, but because it might be teaching me how to love. Sidebar, a dad's short list of virtues, with footnotes. Patience, especially when your child decides that socks are too emotional today. Humility, for when you try to fix something quickly but actually make it worse. Presence, for when your child is trying to show you something, again. Courage, for going to the parent-teacher conference after the glitter incident. Compassion, for yourself, because this is hard, and you're doing better than you think. Dad fail #01, the great philosophy pancake debacle. One morning, feeling inspired by Aristotle, I decided to make breakfast an occasion for virtue. I announced to my kids with my best wise dad voice, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit." My 5-year-old stared at me blankly. My 3-year-old asked for pancakes. I proceeded to burn the pancakes while repeating the quote aloud like a mantra, determined to embody wisdom. Eventually I served them half-burned, half-raw frisbees. No one was impressed. Later my oldest whispered, Dad, I think next time you should just make the pancakes and then say the quote. Lesson learned. A story about shoes. There was a morning, like many, where we were running late for school. One child couldn't find shoes, the other one couldn't find the right shoes. Apparently some shoes make you feel fast and others do not. My wife and I were passing each other in the hallway like harried airline staff managing a terminal meltdown. I was about to yell when something in me stopped. Instead, I bent down and tied my child's shoe slowly. I looked him in the eye and said, "You're going to be okay, I love you, we'll figure this out." He nodded, found his fast shoes, we made it on time. That moment cost me 45 seconds, but it bought us both peace. And it reminded me the good life is not efficiency, it's meaning. Sometimes it's in tying shoes slowly rather than barking orders. Sometimes it's in letting the chaos unfold without trying to conquer it. What the philosophers agree on, even if they'd argue about it, Aristotle believed that character was forged through consistent, rational, intentional action. Confucius believed that virtue was cultivated in relationship, especially the everyday relationships of family. Jesus believed that greatness was hidden in humility, and that the child in front of you was more important than any agenda behind you. None of them would have agreed on everything, but they all agreed that life was not about escape. It was about presence. It was about love lived in practice, not in theory. And parenting is practice. You don't earn a black belt in fatherhood. You just keep showing up, you just keep growing, you try again. Takeaway. Quote, "We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act but a habit." Aristotle reflection. Prompt, what's one daily interaction you often rush through, getting dressed, school drop-off, dinner? How could you slow down this week and turn that moment into a space for virtue? Chapter summary. What is a good life with toddlers? Big idea. Philosophers like Aristotle, Confucius, and Jesus taught that the good life isn't about escaping responsibility, it's about living with intention and virtue in the relationships closest to us. And for dads, that starts at home. Key philosophical shift, from theory to practice, from ideals to routines, from asking what's meaningful to how do I live meaningfully today, with these small people around my ankles, spiritual emotional anchor. The good life isn't waiting out there in some distant achievement, it's in the spilled milk, the whispered bedtime stories, the 1,000 tiny decisions to love well. Dad fail wisdom. There's no one big parenting move that makes everything work, but there are hundreds of small ones, showing up, saying sorry, being present, that shape who we're becoming. Final reflection, virtue is grown, not granted, and a dad who practices love, patience, humility, and gentleness every day, however imperfectly, is already living the good life.